after a brief technical difficulties with internet service today on a snowstorm campus. We'll keep going. So again, I will let you guys know for sure after that recount request date, which is December 6th. But as of right now, we don't have any information from anyone that there will be something requested. But we'll let you know for sure at that time. Okay. So turning now to page 3 in your packet. The first box at the top is about voter registration. So we're going to talk about voter registration and turnout in general first for this election. So as you see, there are 3 numbers at the top of that chart. The first row is our total registered voters. This includes active and inactive voters, as well as pre-registered voters. So pre-registered voters are those 16, 17-year-olds who aren't sent a ballot until they turn 18. And then inactive voters also are voters who are still on our voter rolls, but we don't actively send a ballot to their address because perhaps it has gotten a undeliverable ballot come back or other types of information that it might not be a good address, so their address has been inactivated. But if they were to walk into a vote center with their ID and their information, they can activate on the spot and vote. So the total number there is that 477,607. Then when you shrink that to just active registered voters, but still including those pre-registered numbers, it's 418,940. And the reason I include that number here for you, you will see that that is included in some of the tabulation systems because the state uses the general active number when they pre-populate numbers like on election night reporting that you might see on the website and things. But as we know, that's not actually everyone who got a ballot because pre-registered voters don't get ballots. So the actual number of eligible active registered voters, which means 18 and over only in this election, was 410,593. So that's the number we use for calculating turnout. And when you take that and our total number of ballots, our turnout for this election was 63.3% turnout. Our official turnout, again, in these documents, the final official turnout varies a little from what you might have seen on election night reporting, both because of the registration number used and also because, as you see when we walk through, we separate out property owner ballots. So those are ballots where people, because they own property, vote on certain ballot measures and things, but they're not actually registered voters here. So we separate those out of turnout as well. So our turnout here of 63.3% is similar to the entire state, which right now is unofficially about 66.28%. That's down from about 74.9% in 2018 for the state as a whole. I've included on the slide our county turnout in 2018, which was 73.5% as a whole. But as you can see, only about 10 or 14,000 more ballots because we had less registered voters. Back in November 2018, we only had 374,000 voters. So we have more voters in general now than 2018. Our turnout percentages, as you can see on the slide here, we did have 95.31% use their mail ballots, and 4.68% cast a ballot in person. That is, again, what we expected and in line with prior or previous elections. Our decreasing trend in in-person voting as people are more and more comfortable, and we have more and more drop boxes for them to use securely during that time. November 2018 was almost 6% in person, so this has dropped some since then, which is again in line with all of the trends we're seeing at the state as well. As a just a curious number that canvas boards are often interested in, how those mail ballots come back to us. About 83% of those mail ballots came back to us through our 24-hour drop boxes. So that is definitely the preferred method in Arapahoe County. About 7% came through the actual U.S. mail, and then 4% were dropped off using the silver boxes at the front of our vote centers. And interestingly, just for the number of volume of how much of this came in on election day, final election day for you all, out of the 260,000 ballots, we had approximately 77,000 of those mail ballots came in on election day. About 6,000 just through our drive-through tent services alone. So a lot of people waiting till that last day to vote. And about 9,000 of the 12,000 total in-person votes on final election day. So this was definitely an election where we had a very large group of ballots coming in on the last day. One final registration note, our voter services team did over 31,000 registration transactions between the Uocava mail date, which is 45 days before the election, and the election. So that would be new registrations, updates, cancellations, etc. So over 31,000 voters did have their records updated or registered for the first time just in the 45 days leading into the election. So just to give you a sense of the scale of the changes there. Any questions about those general numbers? Okay. So now we'll go to sort of the reconciliation part of the canvas, which is really your main job here today. It's the next two charts on the report that you're looking at here. So the first chart in the middle will show you basically listing out both in SCORE, which is our statewide voter registration database, and in when it says ICC, that is the acronym for our tabulator, so for our actual voting systems, tabulation systems. So you'll see we have the number of mail ballots, provisional ballots, and in-person ballots, all that were given vote credit in the statewide database, adding up together, and then the number of, out of the separate system with the reports from that system, the number of mail ballots and in-person ballots that were tabulated.
I'm sorry, say what page it is?
Oh, same page 3, just
Same,
the
okay, I thought
chart,
you were
next
moving
chart
on.
down. Sorry, the next chart down. So we have mail ballots, in-person ballots, and then you'll see the 305 property owner ballots from the tabulation system there. So when you have those in-person and mail ballots together, the chart that I have on the screen is basically your final chart here at the bottom comparing those numbers. So the total tabulated from the tabulation system and the total vote credit given to voters in SCORE. The difference is that we had 351 less vote credit given than ballots. You go into sort of the numbers behind that, going down. First thing is we need to subtract out those 305 property owners, because again, those are not registered voters that would get vote credit. So we would subtract those out from that total, which takes us to 46 less vote credits in SCORE than ballots. And so we have tracked those down in our team through reconciliation methods. 6 in-person ballots, because there are 22 provisional ballots are tracked separately in SCORE. They're not called in-person, so we subtract that number out. And then 40 mail ballot credits. So our team has gone through in terms of explanations for the reconciliation of the missing vote credit, and there's a couple of different things. On the in-person, we've gone through and checked all of the logs and the reconciliation documents to match the number checked in with the number of mail ballots. What we believe is likely that this was an issue of election judge error in terms of issuing from SCORE a mail ballot label versus an in-person label when the person checks in. So if you actually cast an in-person ballot, but SCORE thinks you cast a mail ballot, those numbers get off, and that has to do with how it is issued from the judge in WebSCORE. We also know from our reports that there are always times, and we have all of these documented in our logs, that voter spoils a ballot in the in-person center and then comes back and asks for a new one. And sometimes the credit, they don't get given credit. It spoils the ballot in the voter registration system, but then they don't get credit for the new one that they do actually pass. So we think that those are the explanations for the couple of vote credits being off in the SCORE system. Again, because of the anonymous voting that happens, once we detach them, it's hard to trace them back exactly to which voters that happened to, but these are the situations we've seen. In the mail ballots, we've gone through in terms of trying to find the missing vote credit. Our team has gone through all of our batches and all our logs. 40 mail ballots. As you both know from doing the RLA, most of our batches are 100. But we have gone through, especially any small batches, and double checked to make sure that no batches got tabulated twice. We don't have any evidence of things being tabulated twice or duplicated twice or anything along those lines. We have looked through, we think what likely is happening is, again, vote credit in SCORE on the SCORE side when processing these various types of specialty ballots that we'll talk about later in the canvas. that come in smaller batches. Our statewide, our ULACAVAs, our household swaps and the cure process, as those are done one by one or in small little batches, that again, there was a user error in score that makes those ballots not get the proper credit flipped in score. Any questions about any of the numbers in those two charts? So now we'll go a little more deeper into some of the ballot acceptance and rejections. If you want to go to page 4. Our overall number of mail ballots accepted and rejected. You can see our percentages that we did accept 98.91% of all mail ballots that came in. Only about 1% were rejected overall. Some rejection codes are not allowed to be cured. Some are. So if you look at the chart on your page right there, the ones that are allowed to be cured is when you have no signature, you forgot to sign your envelope, or your signature is discrepancy, or you missing ID. You needed to give an ID and you forgot to include a copy of the ID. Those are all ones that under state law generate a letter out to the voter and give them a chance to cure. These other rejection codes, though, don't give an opportunity to cure. So, for example, these 2 ballots in 1 envelope. If somebody returned 2 ballots in 1 envelope, it could have been 2 people from the same household. We have no idea, but you can't count one because you don't know which one it is or where the other one came from. Neither of them count. Voted wrong ballot is when someone, and this happened, as you can see 5 times, returned an election prior election ballot to us. So it was an envelope for this election that scanned properly and accepted its signature verification properly. And then when our ballot openers opened it, it was actually a primary election ballot. Again, can't count that. That's not part of this election. So, voter mishaps happen. Empty envelopes. We also get empty envelopes. Sometimes people do that on purpose. Sometimes they don't. We also have the specific one that talks about verification affidavit not complete. That's a category for folks like military and overseas who use our secure ballot portal that the Secretary of State puts out. They have to sign an affidavit. It's their equivalent to signing the envelope. If they don't complete that and submit that, we can't count the ballot. The ballot gets rejected. So those are some of the examples of things that are cannot be counted and accepted when they come in. We also have some that will receive after 7. That's our shorthand for just ballots that come in too late, right, past the deadline. Overall, these are usually ones that just come trickling in. Our ballot boxes are locked at 7 p.m. on election day, but they can still come in through the mail or other types of ways like that. There are occasionally also issues, both now and that happen after the canvass, for ballots that get to us from other counties or that had been a statewide ballot or something that was lost in the mail somewhere and it gets to us so late that we can't process it and include it as well, even if it necessarily could have been timely passed by the voter. We can't always control the mail and things like that. So, for example, we've had a few ballots, 5 ballots coming from like another county that just because of problems with delivery through FedEx and other things like that didn't get here in time for us to be able to do the process with election judges to do duplication and things that are required to be done, even though it was passed by the voters. So those go into like receipt of after 7. Any questions about rejection codes overall?
As far as signature discrepancy, what allowance does the technical equipment make for age-related degeneration of signatures?
Sure. So what we do for the SIG-Ver judges that are working on the signature verification, they start with the most recent signature and then move back in time. So they definitely work and notice patterns, but they always start with the most recent signature, maybe the most recent ballot cast, or the most recent driver's license signature, whatever's most recent. They won't start with your 18-year-old signature, for example. And then if there is any concern, like we've had some voters, let's say who actually have broken their hand or do something like that, that is really out of the ordinary, then that might generate a cure notice, and then the voter gets to cure that. And when we have the supplemental report coming up, we'll talk more in detail about those signature cures.
So signature discrepancy is allowed to be cured.
Yes.
And so I had, you noted 5 different categories that there weren't possibilities for cure, correct? 2 ballots, voted wrong ballot, empty envelope, received after 7 in the verification affidavit.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. So we'll go next to page 5. Like I said, we will talk more about signatures a little later. Page 5 is then we want to talk about some of these special categories of ballots. So provisional ballots. We did have 29 provisional ballots passed across the county. 22 of those were accepted, so 75% acceptance rate, and 7 were rejected. You can see in the chart here the reason why they were rejected. 6 of them, it was that a mail ballot had been issued. So sometimes people come into a vote center because they haven't gotten their ballot track notification yet, or they're worried that their ballot isn't going to get to us in time because they put it in the U.S. Postal Service, for example, or something like that. So they cast a provisional ballot because there is vote credit or something in the system already. And so they cast a provisional ballot, and then we do that reconciliation after the election to see, which ballot came from them, which came first, and you only count one. So that would be what those is. So those that were rejected is because they did have the other ballot accepted instead. And then we did have one rejected provisional ballot from, as we'll talk about in the later slide, the Arapahoe County Detention Center. We set up a vote center there on the final day. Under Colorado state law, you can vote if you are there under a misdemeanor conviction. You cannot vote if you're there under a felony conviction. And we ran we compare our records to the Department of Corrections records, and there was one person who passed a provisional ballot. They were unsure of their status, and they were actually there for a felony, so could not be counted. We also had statewide ballots that were received, and 308 ballots from other counties, from statewide ballots. And if you want to turn to the next page, page 6 is all of our duplicated ballots. So statewide is one category of duplicated ballot, as you can see, 308 in this vote. So statewide ballots, that's what the picture is here on the screen of what the statewide ballot is. It's just those statewide offices and statewide ballot measures, but it's on regular paper and it can't be scanned by our machines. So every single one of those needs to be duplicated by a team. So those were all duplicated. You can see these other categories. Our biggest category was our military and overseas ballots that were transmitted through the portal. We had 954 of those. So that was obviously a large amount that we worked on for a lot. Because the ballot was so long this year with all of the different offices and ballot measures from local questions and all, it took our bipartisan teams approximately 90 to 120 minutes for each batch of 25. It's just that's how long it takes to actually duplicate the whole thing and then read it back to double check. So it was a very slow process, and as you can see, we had 2,000 total over the course of the election that needed to be duplicated. Some of these other categories are things that are caught by our ballot openers, right? So a damaged ballot that's ripped and torn or has something spilled on it, red ink, that won't be read by our tabulators, so we need to make sure to pull those and duplicate them so that they can be read. Accessible ballots and emergency replacement ballots are also ones that come through the secure online portal under state law. So those also all have to 100% be duplicated because they're just printed on normal printer paper.
Were you able to track down what the larger problems were with the transmitted ballots for your tablet?
So there aren't necessarily problems with them. They just all have to be duplicated because they come through on normal paper. Yeah, they're not on ballot paper. So 100% have to be duplicated, no matter what. Yeah. And we have a few more UOCAVA numbers a little later on about this. But everyone that comes through us electronically has to be duplicated. And that's the voter's choice of how they return it. Any questions about the duplication? All right. what we're gonna do then is go to the next little supplemental reports. It's sort of a 2-page item next in your chart. And this is where we're gonna talk a little more about signature discrepancies and cures. So as you can see, these are the 3 types that we talked about before of rejections that get sent a cure notice: the missing signature, the signature discrepancy, and the missing ID. And we've included the number of letters sent, the cure notices sent, the number actually cured and returned, and the number not returned. So you can see our overall numbers is we sent about 3,391 letters for curing. That's over the entire election. So as they come in early vote, we're sending those letters in early vote. They just keep rolling. Overall, 36% were cured by the voters. But you can see that certain categories, like the missing identification, was cured at a 76% rate. That is usually new mail ballot voters who for the first time need to include an ID. So that was a very high cure rate for that type. As you can see, there were lower cure rates for the other types. As you can see in the next chart, the method, there are many ways that a voter can cure, is up to them. Our vast preference in Arapahoe County is definitely for using the mobile device app and the text-to-cure system. 61% use that. And then we have various numbers of folks trying to use other types like mail or just emailing it, where we take a picture and mail it to or email it to us. And then we did have a few people who dropped off those early cures while our vote centers were still open. You can drop it off at a vote center if you're doing it that early. But definitely the mobile device curing is the most popular, and that is statewide now, but it was something that was originally done here in Arapahoe County. Was one of the first counties to use that system. So we've been using it for a while. People like it. We've also included for you here the political party breakdown of the uncured ballots. As you can see, the majority of them, 55%, are unaffiliated with voters. We do not cure their ballots. Any questions about curing and signature deficiencies? Our next page is kind of our detail about the military and overseas voters. So we sent a total of 3,827 ballots, either by mail or email, linked to those overseas voters. They choose the method of how they receive the ballot. And then even if you receive a ballot by mail, if time is getting short, you can return through the electronic portal. So it's all in the hands of the voter of what works for them. So they choose the method of receiving and sending back. Our turnout overall was 38.4% for UAPABA voters, which is somewhat in line with past. Again, 2018 November election was 43%, so it is usually a little lower than the overall turnout number, especially in non-presidential elections. In presidential elections, for example, in 2020 November, it was up to 70%, but that's still a little lower than the overall turnout. About 2/3 are sent out electronically. That's the choice, and what that is just a link to the secure portal. We don't actually send them a ballot electronically. We send them a link to the state portal that's run by the Secretary of State. You can see overall 73.6% returned through online methods. That's either through that secure portal, or some of them do, again, have the option, depending on their tech and what they're able to do, to send something back by email. We have a special email address if someone needs to just take a picture and send it. We accommodate whatever they need to do. And then, as you can see, these are the specific kind of rejection codes for the UAPABA voters themselves based on our staff logs. They also go through signature validation. It's just using that affidavit instead of an envelope, so that is still required, and so that's all in here. And they also have the opportunity to cure, so they get notices by email if they're going to cure, and they can return that cure paperwork by email back and forth. So we do that same type of process with our UAPABA voters. They sometimes have no verification affidavit at all, which if we receive a ballot with no affidavit, we send an email to the voter and say, hey, did you need to upload it? Was there a problem in the upload? And we have a lot of back and forth correspondence with them. Same thing with no ballots submitted. If we get a verification update through the state portal and there's no ballot, we again contact the voter and say, we got this, but did you mean to attach a ballot? And our team actually works really hard being kind of tech support for folks around the globe to try to get them to help through that state portal. Sometimes it ends up just not working, or the voter is not responsive, or they just can't get it today. So our team has really got a good list of items to talk with the Secretary of State to hopefully improve that portal for people to use in the upcoming elections based on some of these experiences. Any questions about that? Okay. Then the last pages on this report are the write-ins. And so what we have here is, you'll see the write-in totals on the official summary report that we're going to get to in a moment. But what's in your report here is it actually gives you the rejects. So as you know, we only count write-in votes for actual qualified individuals who have signed up to be a write-in candidate. So example, for U.S. Senate, we have 2 votes were received and counted for Joanne Roth, 1 for Rutledge, but 576 were rejected for not qualified. So those would be the people who wrote in Abraham Lincoln, Mickey Mouse, things like that. They all just kind of go into that group there. Other usually means either that they filled in the bubble but didn't write anything in, or they just kind of made a stray mark that triggered the software, but again, there wasn't actually anything to note there. So the important thing I wanted to make sure you guys saw here, first of all, is the number of write-ins. It goes onto the back here. And because of this, every single ballot that had something like one of those marks or something with a write-in had to go to adjudication. So our team spent a lot of time in adjudication in this election. Those are bipartisan teams doing this. For every single one of these passed, even the Mickey Mouse and the Abraham Lincolns. They had to do multiple clicks and spend time doing every single one of these. So that's why these numbers are included here, even though these reject numbers aren't going to be on the official results you see. We like to make sure the Kansas Board has those as well. And then just one more item that isn't in your report, but these are kind of like little subcategories of things, just to give an update on some unique voter options that we were using in 2022. All of these we piloted in the primary, but just how they worked in the general election. Our confined voter program at the detention center, we did get 35 mail ballots returned. We set up a silver box there so that people could get mail ballots mailed to them, have basically their own secure drop box to put them into. So we got 35 ballots back that way. And then we also had 26 in-person voters on final election day. And 6 of those were statewide ballots. So these were inmates here who actually were residents or voters of Adams or Douglas or Denver. So we did issue those statewide ballots and then send them on to the proper county to be counted. So that was how much we were able to do there. That's a program we're going to continue in future years as well. Our joint vote center in Aurora, you can see it ended up being almost exactly split. So 82 Arapahoe County voters and 91 Adams County voters during the time that that vote center was open. So it really shows that that location is something that is a good location, and people in Aurora who don't realize that Colfax Avenue splits the counties and that splitting counties matters for voting, they went in there and almost beat equal numbers. So that worked out well. We're also looking at continuing that in the future. Curbside ballot pickup, we had less interest in that this year than 2020, but we did have 14 voters use that at the administration building, this building here, this election. So that's basically a chance for folks who just need a replacement or a new mail ballot packet, but for various reasons, either health or mobility or other reasons, just want to be able to stay in their car and have it brought to them instead of coming into a vote center. So we did have 14 of those. Again, we're continuing that program to continue accessibility for folks. And our new co-branded drop box with Douglas County, we did get 1,600 Arapahoe County ballots over the 3 weeks it was open. That's again right there on County Line Road at the rec center, which is technically in Douglas County, but it's right there on the border with Arapahoe County. So it's a great location, and Arapahoe County folks are using it. questions on any of those? Okay, so, in addition to all of those numbers and balancing and things, the other canvas requirement is for you to review the votes cast for each candidate in office on the ballot and be able to certify. So in your packet now you have the official summary report, which looks like this. This is what gets sent to the Secretary of State and to the city clerks, for example, who had something on the ballot, as will become the abstract, the official abstract of the election. This does include all, as you can see, mail ballots and in-person totals. But at the top, you'll see this isn't the final active eligible voter. This was a number. This was the earlier number that was placed in as a placeholder, and doesn't include the same. It also does not break it down in this document by precincts. That'll be the next document that you will see. This is overall totals. It does include the overvotes and undervotes for each contest on this as well. So basically, this is just here for you to be able to page through and let me know if you have any questions about anything, either what the topics mean or the categories mean, or any questions about any particular results. As I said, we don't have anything in a recount range for any of these topics or any of these items. It goes in ballot order, so the local ones will be at the end, and the state U.S. Senate starts at the beginning. You'll see that write-in votes that were actually counted are listed all on here, as well as minor parties votes are all listed in here as well. Approval voting, libertarian, etc. This does also include the property owner ballots in these totals, but property owner ballots were only issued for the local issues at the end. So like the Littleton, East Smoky Hill, Collins Reach, Traditions, Metropolitan District, Valley Sanitation, those very last ones is what made up the 305. So we have a separate, like that's why we subtract those out. We do know the number of those. Questions? Yep, that'll be part of the packet that's online and sent to Secretary of State. The last report you have, this is where I give you the 12-page summary. So this is the total statement of votes cast for precinct by precinct. It will tell you the registered voters, and now this is the total active voters. It's not narrowed down for pre-reg, just the voters there. And then the total votes cast and the percentage turnout by precinct. The reason it says redacted is we are required under state law for redacting to protect voter anonymity any precinct that is less than 10 ballots. So you'll see there might be a few in here, and I know there are a few that basically it has redactions, and it wouldn't tell you, not necessarily on the summary page, but when I show you the larger one, it won't have the actual votes. So this is a summary page that shows you the number of voters and the number of votes cast. And then what I've got here on the laptop is the 1,200-page rest of this report, which goes through every single race you just saw. It goes through every single race you just saw, and it will tell you how many votes for each candidate. So, for example, I'm going to pass this over so you can look at it. This is the U.S. Senate race, and you will see there's some stars in a certain precinct. That's where the votes are redacted because there's less than 10 in that precinct. But you too can scroll through that and look at the particular races that happen beyond your summary pages here. And so every row is a precinct and every column is a candidate. When you get to certain races, it'll tell you like the number of votes.
I don't think it's
probably,
a
yeah,
text thing.
just do the number or the arrow keys down below probably on the keyboard. The arrows. There we go. This will also be part of the packet we put online. The more user-friendly version that we do of this is later this week we will have an interactive map on our website where you can just click on a precinct and it tells you the turnout and the vote totals for each candidate in each race within that precinct in a graphical map interface. But this document also goes on the website as well. And the total, if you want to flip to the back of this, you'll see at the totals here, it tells you property owners 305, because they are kind of counted as their own precinct, so to speak. And then the total is that same total we've seen before, the 260, 210. And then, like I said, the breakdown is usually people like the map more than that really well document. Any questions about that statement of vote cast by precinct? That is the end of all of the reports and things we need to run through. Is there any questions you have about anything else about the election, about the process, about the audit that you were at, anything else before we just have you guys go through, and the next step is basically to sign for the certification. So, questions for anything right now?
Would like to thank you, personally, I'm sure for Michelle, that I appreciate all of the education you've provided and the helping understanding exactly things. I appreciate it.
Sure. Well, I appreciate you agreeing to do this extra work. For sure. All right. Then this is the certificate of election. I put on the screen here basically what it says is this is coming straight from like the statutory requirements and all, that you have reviewed the post-election RLA, if you've been involved in the RLA, reviewed the ballot forms and logs and numbers associated with this election, compared the numbers of ballots counted to the number of ballots cast, and you're certifying those official results to go to the Secretary of State. Once you have signed this, this will also be sent to the Secretary of State with those official reports there. So I will start it for signatures here, and then once the three of you have signed, I will put the seal on it, and then I'll be able to scan it and send it off from there. And the originals get saved like with the logic and accuracy test with originals and everything, all as election records from this election. But we send scans to the Secretary of State's office. we'll just put the seal on here. And we are set to go. Like I said, I will let you know for sure when the deadline has passed for the requested recount, but as of now, we're not expecting any. And so then that could be the end. Regardless, the election is certified and official. Even if a recount occurs, then it's a separate certification in Canvas that happens anyway. So this election is officially closed and certified for the general election of 2022 in Arapahoe County. So thank you all for your help. And then we'll be done. Thank you much.